It seems sometimes there are so many enemies that we have in life that we don't know which way to turn first. Everybody's looking to be in our place. Everybody's looking to take our parking place. Everybody's looking to take our spot, usurp us at work, that we sometimes have a hard time getting a grip on who is our friend and who stands opposed to us. The truth is probably closer to the idea that we are our own worst enemy most, if not all of the time, that we stand in our own way, that we become the impenetrable wall that doesn't allow us to cross the bridge to become something greater, something more powerful and bigger and more knowledgeable than before. This concept perhaps has its home in this week's Torah portion, which begins the third book of the Bible, of the Torah, Vayikra, where it says, beginning with the words, Vayikra el Moshe, and God called unto Moses, that Moses' call by God was something that was an appeal directly and only to him. Now that sounds pretty ordinary, and one would expect to understand that reading the words of the text, but look a little bit deeper for a moment. They weren't intended for Aaron, they weren't intended for Miriam, they weren't intended for Moses' wife or his children or anybody else in the camp of Israel, solely for Moses' ears alone. And those words penetrated Moses' ears, but if somebody were to say, I see you, Moses, going into, say, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, to do X, well, it must be something that I'm called upon to do as well. That would be wrong. One would be mistaken in thinking so. And it was so that the two sons of Aaron did precisely that. Nadav and Abihu went and approached God, offering some strange foreign fire before the Lord, and they were punished for it. Perhaps most rightly because they stood in their own path. They were listening to words which they really didn't hear, and which were never really intended for them. What they did was they saw the Father, they imitated his actions, they followed what he was doing when it wasn't for them to do that. This is Aaron's path. It's not yours. It belongs solely to him. And so we learn in this week's Torah portion of Vayikra el Moshe that God calls to Moses. He called to Moses. He didn't call to anybody else. And how one extrapolates that for one's own life is that God speaks to you. God calls to you. God issues forth a cry and says, with your name on it, this is what I would like you to do. This is how I would like you to live your life. These are the words I would like you to have placed in your mouth. And to make known these words to other people in such a situation. The voice of God was not once and then for stopping. The voice of God was something that issued forward and never stopped. Continues on every single day, that speaks to us on an individual level. God is calling for us to listen, God is calling for us to hear, and God is calling for us to respond. But you, such is the power of an individual, overwhelmingly more powerful than a community. God speaks, literally, to you, with your name on it, not somebody else's. Your path belongs to you. Your way belongs only to you. Respect and honor that, and at the same time respect and honor that very privilege that God has chosen you amongst all the people in the world to execute a specific task. You know the word bashert. We usually refer to it when we're talking about a man finds a woman finds a man, they fall in love, and they call each other their bashert. They're destined. But perhaps it's more than that. Perhaps a lot of life is destiny because God is calling and God is asking, maybe even begging, for us to open our own ears and to listen. And perhaps if we don't get the point, we can look a little bit further to the very second verse of the Sidra, where God says, when an individual offers a sacrifice before the Lord, when an individual offers a sacrifice to the Lord, when God's spoken to an individual, and said, this is what I would like you to do, that person responds. Not the neighbor, not the mother, not the father, that person individually. Open, be open-eared, open-hearted, and open-throated in response to God's word as it issues forward from Sinai, as the Midrash says, as it did 4,000 years ago, as it does at this very moment. Shabbat Shalom.